From the sky far above, the hawk cried. The hunter looked up at the bird for a moment as it circled the clearing and then returned to his work. Something about the hawk gnawed at the back of his mind. He paused. Sitting back on his heels, the hunter looked skyward, studying the bird. The hawk had tightened its path and was now circling the downed deer. "Master Hawk," he said in a low voice, "you may eat carrion in the winter, but now there is too much game in these woods for a great hunter like yourself to wait on another hunter's kill. You do not fly like you are wounded or ill. What are you about?" As if in reply, the hawk flew down to land on a tree branch above the deer carcass. The bird looked down at the meat, then cast a glance at the hunter, shook its wings, and folded them back against its body. Then the hawk turned its head and stared down the trail. The hunter followed its gaze and sent his hearing out, searching in the way of his people. Layer upon layer of sound came to him. The call of the birds, the wind through the trees, the movement of small creatures. And off in the distance there was silence. Without hesitation the hunter stood, left his kill, and slipped into the shadows. Like the prow of a ship as it parted the waters, something was pushing a wave of silence before it, rippling through the trees, moving up the deer trail, quieting the forest creatures in its wake. Unconcerned, the hawk flew down from its perch and landed near the deer. It turned its head this way and that, inspecting the carcass, then hopped over to the pile of organs and began to tear pieces off the liver with its sharp beak. The hunter made his way to the pines that grew along the north side of the clearing. The lower branches of the younger trees stretched nearly to the ground, making the space underneath each pine a low and shadowed chamber. The hunter had often hidden under these trees to learn the habits of the deer that came to feed here. He checked the angle of the sun and judged it would not shine fully on the area beneath the trees for another 2 hours. It would be enough. He crawled into the dark space under the nearest pine and waited. Nearly half an hour passed before the hunter caught the first signs of movement down the trail. A darker shadow had emerged from the dimness of the forest. As the shadow neared, it took shape and became a tall man dressed in black travelling clothes. The wide black brim of a black felt hat hid the tall man's face. A long black cloak covered his lean frame. A long battle sword sheathed in black leather rested at his hip. The tall man lifted his head to sniff the air, and hawk-like features emerged from shadow. A long, aquiline nose, dark eyes, and olive skin showed the man to be an Etruscan. His thick black hair, bearded chin, and moustache all bore traces of silver. He moved as a man accustomed to walking in dangerous places, with care and in silence, stopping frequently to listen to his surroundings. This was a warrior past his youth, but still strong and swift, wise in the ways of war. That the man had seen war was not why the wild things came silent at his approach, though. This man was a predator. They could see it in the way the man's eyes pierced in the shadows without fear, and in the way his hands seemed quick and ready even when they were at rest and still. The animals fell silent before him as they would the coming of a panther, hoping that the dark stalker will pass them by if only they make no sound. The tall man made his slow, careful way through the clearing. He stopped opposite the young pine that hid the hunter and knelt to examine something on the ground. He drew a dagger from under his cloak, pierced the thing before him, and held up the deer heart the hunter had thrown down the trail. The tall man turned his head to study the trees surrounding the clearing. The hunter held his breath, fearing that the slight sound might betray his presence. After a long moment the tall man let the heart slide off his dagger. He wiped the blade on the grass, and then came to his feet, sheathing the dagger. As he continued on down the trail, a thin half-smile came to his lips. The hunter let the tall man get another 20 paces past his hiding place and then slipped out from under the tree and began his stalk. He moved carefully, matching his own step with the tall man's, so as to hide the slight sound of his deerskin-clad feet made as they pressed upon the grass. Coming up from behind, he would not be able to see the tall man's hands because of the black cloak, and this worried him. The tall man came upon the hawk feeding on the deer liver and halted. The hunter froze. The tall man looked from the hawk to the piled organs and then to the split deer carcass. The hunter hesitated. He was still too far away to spring upon the tall man.